Hi guys, thanks for stopping back to Pete's Garage. You know, ever since I made a video about welding plastic parts, a lot of people have asked if you can weld or repair plastic bumper covers. And the answer is yes. I fixed many of them before. And it's just like welding plastic. It is plastic. It's a thermoplastic, which means it can be welded again or melted again. So it's fairly easy to fix. Now, the question is, why would you want to fix it versus replacing it? If you're going to replace a bumper cover, it might cost anywhere to $350, $400 plus shipping. Then you got to paint it, the time to take one off, put one back on, reassemble it. You might be talking about 10, 12 hours to replace and repair a bumper cover, where you can just fix a crack like this, clean it up and paint it maybe in 2, 3 hours. So you save a lot of time by fixing it on the car, depending on where it's cracked and how it's cracked. Okay, so you want to look at the crack itself, how it's cracked, where it's cracked, and how to fix it. If it was on a position or a place that was really difficult to fix on a curve, it might take a little more time, but it can be done. But this is on the flat part. There is a little detail down here that I'll have to fix, so I'll show you that. So let's take a close-up of this, and I'll show you how to get started. Now, if we look at this crack on this particular bumper cover, this is a Lincoln Zephyr. You can see that we got a flap sticking off here. This is kind of sticking up. Got a piece completely missing right here. And there's a little detail on the bottom, a little shape to the bumper here where this is going to have to be fixed right here. Now, the first thing you look at is, even though you can't see it, this is cracked way up to in here, and this crack ends right around here. And plastic is kind of like glass. When you have a crack, wherever it terminates right here, it's going to be a very high stress point. There's a lot of stress right on that little point where the crack ends on both sides here. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I'm just going to take a cutoff tool, and I'm going to start to trim. I want to trim like almost like a V shape in the plastic, and I want to see exactly where the stress ends. So I'm going to sort of trim that, and you don't want to do it too fast because it will burn. You don't want to burn the plastic. And I can see the crack goes up here a little bit further, so I'm going to continue to trim this down. Now, just like metal bodywork, even though the repair is going to go to here, you're going to have to repair out here somewhere. So you want to grind off some of the paint and look and see a crack end somewhere around here. So I'm going to go a little bit further. Okay, got the crack ending somewhere around here. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to clean up all around this crack. I'll cut off this part here. Let me clean it up and we'll come back and take another look at it. Now I got this ground down here, and you can see that I have the crack ends somewhere right around in here, and then it goes up into here. Now I've got this area cut out, just cleaned up. Now when you weld plastic, it's very easy to introduce a stress into the area that you're welding. And what I mean by that is, as you heat the plastic up, and as it's welding, if you push on it like that, it's going to stay like that, and then you'll have a deformed area that you'll have to fix. So you want to weld it, and you're just trying to weld or glue it together. You're not trying to push it together. You don't have to jam it together. It's a very, very delicate material. Even though it's plastic and it's pretty firm, it's delicate when it's heated up. So you don't want to overheat it. If you overheat it, you can burn it, and you'll never get it right again. And also, when you do grind this down and get it ready, you don't want to take off too much of the material, because you would like to use the original material or the material around it as the filler rod, or you want to melt the area around it to fuse it all together. If you grind too much away, you won't have enough to sort of move it around and push it into place and weld the part together. So this will only take a few minutes. I got my iron here. This is my plastic welding iron. You can use a soldering iron if you have a flat tip. You can use that. That'll work fine. But you just have to be careful with the temperature. You don't want to, if you put this iron down and you put it on that plastic and hold it there, it'll blow right through. because it does melt pretty quick. So I'm going to work this way with the weld because there's the stress right here. I want to kind of weld this, relieve the stress, let it cool down and weld into place, and I'm going to work my way this way, sort of going in this sort of motion with the iron, and I'm just going to hold this, just gently hold this into place so it'll go back into the to the original position. So I'm just going to start. So I'm going to look here. I got my crack right there. So I'm going to start to melt this plastic and just sort of go like this. And I'm just sort of holding this here. I'm not really pushing down. I'm just holding it back where it should go, and I'm taking the plastic, I'm sort of melting it and pushing it around. You can see how I'm sort of just melting it. I'm starting past the crack so I relieve any stress that's there. And when you push it back, it kind of is difficult to see where the crack is because it will virtually disappear as you push it together and start to weld it. So you want to make sure you heat it up enough where you're going to go deep enough. You want the penetration. You just don't want to do a surface weld. If you surface weld, it won't be strong enough. It'll crack again. So if I go like this and you get some of it welded, and you're unsure as to where the crack is, it's easy just to stop. I'll just stop for a second. Just let it cool down, and then just go like that again. Now I can see where the crack is again. So now I know where I'm going to be welding. And I did put a little divot there to make it easy because you can sort of feel it. So I'm just kind of taking the plastic on the top and I'm pushing it down, and the bottom, and I'm kind of moving it into place. So I'm heating up the plastic on either side of the crack, and I'm pushing it into the area where I ground down. I'll fill in the outside of that later, but I'm just trying to get the penetration and the depth of the plastic so that it welds all the way through. This will take a little bit of time, but it's worth watching because it's kind of a technique. And once you have the technique down, you'll be really good at it. Nice and slow. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just sort of skimming the surface of the plastic with the iron. I'm letting the iron heat the plastic up. I'm not forcing the iron into the plastic. And you can see it sort of bubbles. See how it gets nice and pliable? That's what you want. You want to get it to the point where it's melting, and the two parts of the plastic are actually melted at the same time, and then the plastic will be back to being in one solid piece. Don't go too far. You don't want to blow through it. Like I said, it's very easy to do. I can feel a little area there where it's a little shallow. So I'm just going to leave that. I'll fill that in later. My main concern right now is just to fix the cracks in the plastic, then make the piece to fill the big hole of the part that's missing. So I go like that, keep working my way towards the end here, making sure I get in there deep enough where I'm getting penetration. I'm not holding it there too long. You can see I just sort of hold it in one spot and move it because it heats and it melts very, very quick. You should have a fan also blowing some of that smoke away. I'm melting a urethane plastic, and it's really not the best thing to be breathing in, but again, you wouldn't be able to hear me if I had a mask on. And again, light pressure. I'm only holding this part in place until I get the plastic melted. I'm not pushing it in. I'm just holding it, just barely holding it, so it'll go back and melt right in place. And as you get to the end here, you'll feel it be more flexible. So try not to put too much pressure on there. You want to try and keep it even, just like that. Now I'll wait. You can see still. If I put the iron here and I do that, you can see that if I let go, it kind of still flexible until it cools down and becomes solid again. Okay, I want to get this little corner just a little bit more. And as I said, we'll be putting some filler in here, filler plastic for strength. But right now I'm just trying to get the plastic back into the original shape so that I can do that. A few seconds, it'll cool down. Cool down fairly quick. Okay, I didn't put any stress. You can see there's no stress anywhere in here. The plastic's not deformed. You can tell by if you look at the reflection there. See when you push on it, you can tell the reflection is deformed. So there's no deformity. Now, when you heat this up, the plastic melts probably at a good 200-300 degrees, if not more, maybe around 380, 400 degrees, and it's going to be hot. So if you get that hot plastic on your finger, it's like having super hot sugar or molasses on your finger. It's going to stick and it's going to burn. So don't get that hot plastic on your finger. Just let it cool and be patient. Let me put my iron down. And as it cools, it's going to solidify. And it's still pretty warm. But as you can see now, that crack is no longer a crack. It's fairly welded together. This plastic, the crack itself, is no longer a crack. It's solid. Solid pretty good. And again, we're going to come back and I'll show you how to do some filler material. Now let me fix the bottom. I'm going to fix the bottom. Then we'll come back and I'll show you how to fix this big opening here. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom that I did right there. So I have both parts welded. I have the top part welded and the bottom part welded. There's still a little hole here where there's a chip out, but I'll fix that later when we do the filling. This took about 10 minutes at the most. So I've already got this flap that was cracked off. Now it's fairly strong. I can pull on it, I can tug on it, and it's fairly secure. It's welded together. And you can tell there's no stress. I did not introduce a stress into the plastic because if you see the reflection in here, you see my shoulder reflection here, and I put my hand here, you can see a reflection. It's nice and even. There's no stress. If there was a stress in there, you just kind of see that kind of shape. You see how when you bend the plastic, the reflection changes? So you can use the reflection of the plastic to guide you as to whether or not you're putting a stress in there. And if you put a stress in there, just heat it up and let the stress relieve. You don't want to introduce the stress. You want it to be as stress-free as possible because depending on where you live, I live up in New York, in Buffalo where it gets very cold, and when this gets cold and it flexes, if it shrinks and you put a stress in there, it's going to crack again. Pretty simple. Now, for a part like this, where you have a part missing, and if you do hit your bumper or something like that, try and get all the original pieces because you can fix it and it makes the job go a hell of a lot faster. But since the person didn't have the part, I have to make a piece to fit in there. There's a couple ways to go about that. First of all, you could go to a junkyard, find a similar car. If it's a new car, you might not be able to do that, but find a bumper piece. You could make a gauge. Take a profile gauge. Take a profile gauge, put it against the part you're going to be fixing. Go to the junkyard, find a similar piece of plastic. It doesn't matter what kind of car it's on. All you're looking for is a piece of plastic that has the same kind of profile, and just cut it out, bring it home, and you can trim it down. That's one way to do it. I carry a lot of plastics because I fix a lot of plastic. And I have urethane laying around. I know it's not the same color. All urethane is not the same color. This is black urethane, gray urethane. Urethane comes in all different colors. But I'm going to make a patch panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to cut the piece of plastic to shape a little bit. Now I'm going to leave it big for a very specific reason because I have to make a little curve there. And I'm going to fix this in place. I'm going to trace around it, and then I'm going to cut the plastic, the bumper underneath it, and I'm going to make a patch to go right in that square. It's going to take a few minutes, so I'm not going to film that, but let me make that patch, and we'll come back and weld her in place. Okay, I cut this piece out, and I kind of have it fitted in there, and you can see it's not perfect. There's a gap there. That's okay because we're going to fill it in. And it's kind of flush. I have it tack welded in four corners, just kind of melted in place, and it's flush. I can run my hand across and feel that it's pretty flush. And the nice thing about the plastic is that you can grind this down. We'll be able to grind it down and make it nice and flat. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going around the perimeter of this, and the technique I'm going to be using is this. I'm going to heat up one side like this, and I'm going to push this plastic this direction, like that. And I'm going to take this plastic and push that direction. So I'm kind of like pushing the plastic, melting it, and pushing it towards each other. And as you do that, as you drag it and heat it up, it'll bridge the gap. So you'll fill in the gaps with the plastic itself. And if you go all the way around there and go really slow, you'll be able to create a bond between the patch and the base plastic. But one thing I want to tell you is when I clean up this area here before I put that piece of plastic in there, is I cut out a bunch of little pieces of plastic. You want to save these little pieces of plastic because you can use these as filler as when we come back. So save the original plastic if you do cut any out. So let me weld this all the way around. I'll weld it together, and then I'll show you how that looks. Okay, I got my patch welded in. There you go. I'm going to push on a little bit. You can see that it's nice and firm all the way around. There's no stress induced in the plastic. The reflection in the plastic is nice and even. I don't have to worry about it being stressed out. I won't have to worry about grinding it out. So it is. Don't be afraid to push on it. You want to be able to make sure that you're in there solid. Now, I know it doesn't look pretty. That's fine, because we're going to do another. Now I'm going to go around and I'm going to do the equivalent of what you would do when you use Bondo. You got to fill in around the patch. You got to smooth it out, that kind of thing. And it's going to take this. I welded that in. This plastic patch took me about 10 minutes to get that welded in there. Once you get the technique down, you can move along pretty fast. Now, this is the part where I told you to save all your little plastic pieces that you cut out, because I'm going to use these. I'm going to take the paint off because I don't want the paint in there. The paint will be a contaminant. But I'm going to take this off, and I have a flat iron for smoothing out. And I'm going to do is I'm going to be melting this plastic. I'm going to be pushing it in. Now all I'm going to be doing is smoothing it out and putting filler plastic in all the way around here and smoothing this out, just as you would as if you're using like a spot putty or a Bondo type material. Then with this little hole down here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fill in that hole, melt around it, and smooth out this whole area. This will take about 15 minutes, and when I'm done with that, I'll come back and show you that. As I was doing this, I kind of realized there really is a technique here. And if you don't get to see the technique, you might get frustrated when you're doing your filling part. I just have some filler rod. This is a fiber reinforced plastic rod, and it's a universal plastic, which means it'll stick to almost anything. It'll fill in almost any plastic. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to heat up this plastic. You don't want to push. I'm not going to take and push the plastic like that, 'cause that's how you introduce the stress. And I'm just going to heat this up. See how it starts to melt? And I'm just going to melt this, heat this up and melt this. And I have a little bit filling here, so I'm going to melt some of the rod, melt some of this plastic, and I'm not pushing. I'm just letting the plastic melt underneath the iron, and I'm just I'm smoothing it out. It's almost like buttering a piece of toast. You're taking the melted butter and just smoothing out the area. That's what it feels like. I'm not pushing here. I'm just trying to smooth out the area. And fill in at the same time, and as you move the iron back and forth, you can feel high spots and low spots. So just if you take your time, you can always take some off and put more back on. So don't worry about getting it perfect right off the first bat or right out of the chute, because you can fill it in. It's not hard to do, but it does take a technique. And I thought if someone's doing this for the first time or trying to learn, if you didn't at least see the technique, you might get frustrated and wonder how the hell you do it. So I'm just smoothing out the plastic like that. And you can get it pretty smooth. It's not going to be perfectly smooth, but it's smooth enough so that when you go and just take a 100 grit block to it, it's going to smooth right out, just like Bondo, and it'll look perfect. And just work it slow. Work it slow just like that. Get it nice and smooth. Make sure you get it worked in, and that you have it into all the base material all the way around the outside, melt it in just like that, and then work it around and work through the whole patch or the crack. If you're just fixing a crack, all you have to do is work down the crack. Not the way that sounds, but you just smooth it out just like that, just like filling in with Bondo, except this is going to dry in 15 seconds as soon as I take the iron away. So that's the technique. Let me continue on. Well, there we have it. Here's our finished repair. I can push on it nice and strong, just like the original bumper cover. Nice and strong, all filled in. Got a little detail here on the bottom that I'll work on. I have to work really slow, just like you do when you do Bondo work. So it's the same thing. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten this out real quick with my grinder. So you can see what I'm going to do is I left it kind of high, and I did that on purpose. So I'm going to grind it nice and flat, get it down to where I need to get it, and then I'll wrap up the video. So there you have it, guys. Fixing and welding plastic bumper covers. It doesn't take that long to do, start to finish, including making the video. I fixed this in about an hour, so it doesn't take that long if you take your time, make sure it's done right, It's nice and flexible. Now all I have to do is put some a polyester, a flexible polyester filler over here just to get it nice and flat, sand it down, and paint it like you would any other part of the car. Remember to put the plasticizer in the paint to make sure the paint stays flexible on the bumper cover itself. Get the materials you need, take your time, and you'll do a great job. Saves you a lot of time. It would probably take a good couple hours to get this bumper cover off if I had to take it off, and so I'm saving a good 8-10 hours just fixing it like this. And that's how you do it. If you have any questions, email me, text me, whatever. I'll try and help you if I can. And if you do this kind of work and you have some suggestions, share it with everybody. Let's all try and help each other out, and we all learn from one another. And I appreciate all your texts and comments. It's great. Keep them coming. And I really appreciate you stopping by Pete's Garage.